What up, everyone? This is the Dr. Football Ultimate Patriots podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Teehan. I am recording tonight remote from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. After another day on the front lines of clinical medicine, the patients are gone. Here to talk football. Joining me, as always, the CEO of Hedge Better, my man, Justin Fein. Justin, now joining us as a newly married man. That's right. He is no longer single. He has joined the ranks of the married. What is going on, my friend? How does it feel?
Oh, you know what? It feels good. It's still sinking in. I got to say, it doesn't hit you all at once. I think it's something that you try to take in the day, but then over time you slowly get to that realization whoa, I'm married. Even just saying, oh, my wife versus my girlfriend or fiance, that's a little different. But one thing that Alyssa always understood as a girlfriend, a fiance, and a wife, that when football season starts back up, that's where I'm focused on. And I'm so pumped that we got week 1 starting up in a couple days. It's been a long wait.
Well, first of all, great move getting the wedding in before football season started.
Exactly. Yep. Look, we couldn't risk it. Had to get it out of the way. I do got another wedding actually coming up. Not this weekend, the following weekend, but it'll be over and done with by Sunday, so we're in the clear.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm not too keen on these Sunday fall weddings during football season. Yeah, that's kind of a sneaky, kind of not cool move there.
I totally agree. It's on, from what I'm hearing, it's on a Friday night, so perfect. Giving us plenty of time.
Good to go. Well, Listen, we got a ton of stuff to talk about because of the wedding. We haven't recorded in 2 weeks, and a ton has happened in that time with both the New England Patriots and the NFL. We're going to go through all of it tonight. We are going to preview the NFL. We're going to get into the gambling side of things, talk about some of the futures we like, maybe some good value on the board, both in terms of over-unders and some of the future award bets that we're looking at. We're going to go through the 5 divisions we haven't previewed yet, and we're going to talk a little bit about those. We're going to talk about our Super Bowl winners, which we still haven't given official predictions of who we think is going to be the last 2 teams standing and who's going to be the last one standing next February. And we're going to do that as well. But as always, we're going to start with the New England Patriots and talking about the big news happening in Foxborough. And there has been plenty of it, Justin. So let's get right to it. We have to start with the quarterback decision to go with Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback over Drake May. That's the big news. I'm going to begin with the kickoff, the opening take to start, set the table for the podcast. Look, I'll get right to it, Justin. I understand the need to protect Drake May because the whole franchise is hinging on him. But the problem I have with that and with this choice is that Drake May, to me, and I think to most people, including the head coach, Gerard Mayo, because he said it, looks ready to be an NFL starter. Gerard Mayo said he won the competition or outplayed Jacoby Brissett. They named him the second stringer. He's 1 heartbeat away from being the starter, according to the head coach. Per his comments today or yesterday, Drake May is ready to grow through the process of growth and development of an NFL quarterback. And the problem, Justin, is that the Patriots aren't ready for Drake May, and that is a disgrace. Okay? Drake May developed faster and quicker than was expected, and that's a great problem to have. Okay? He progressed, I think, a lot from what you saw at the beginning training camp to what you saw at the end of training camp. And I'm all for protecting this guy, but the problem is he doesn't need to be protected. He is ready to go out there. And this team is the problem. They're not ready for him yet. They have the most cap space in the league. They are at the bottom of the league in cash spending. They did nothing meaningful to fix their offensive line. And here they are, unable to put their rookie quarterback who is ready to go out there on the field. So now you're putting Jacoby Brissett out there as a placeholder, as a human tackling dummy, as a guy who's going to take reps and snaps away from your rookie quarterback in his rookie year, interfering, slowing down his process, his development. I get it. I understand it's a hard schedule those first 4 weeks. I understand the need to protect him. To me, it is an absolute, I don't know, terrible commentary on the state of this franchise that Drake May is ready for the field and the Patriots aren't ready for Drake May.
Totally agree. I guess the one thing, though, the way I look at it is, what was this team going to ever be ready for anybody, right? Like, they're not ready for anybody. Like, I look at this offense and I say, you know what, there's a lot. And I think there could definitely be some surprises along the way this season. I think some of the talent we have is a little bit better than we may think. I think, it's not all doom and gloom on offense, but, and it's the same goes for the offensive line too. But I don't hate saying, hey, this kid's going to be the starter at some point this season. And I think that was kind of the subtext, right? That's what I took from Gerard Mayo, is that, hey, Drake May will be the starter, whether it's, in a couple weeks or, halfway through the season, whatever. Like, I got the vibe that Drake May will be the starting quarterback to end the season for the Patriots. So if you have to ease him along a little bit to protect him, to allow for some of his other assets and weapons to gel, you want his receiving core to settle in and gel. You want his offensive line to settle in and gel, so that you don't get the kid hurt or kill his confidence or put the heat on him from the media right away on day one. I'm okay with that. To your point, if this team was ready for Drake May on day one, then they probably wouldn't have been a team that got the number 3 overall draft pick, right? Like, I mean, they were a bottom of the barrel franchise for a reason heading into this draft. It allowed them to get somebody like Drake May. I think we both agree that the offseason wasn't as good as it could have been in terms of getting the team prepared to rebuild and to get off to a fast start. But with all that being said, I'm okay with giving Drake May a couple of weeks, let the rest of the team get up to speed, and then see what he can do.
Okay, I'm going to challenge 2 things you said. First thing is, you got the impression that he's going to be the starter at some point. See, I got the opposite impression. I at least had that concern. I agree with you that I'd be shocked if he's not the starter at some point.
Right.
But what really concerned me a little about what Gerard Mayo said is that he kind of went out of his way to say, we support Jacoby Brissett and he's our starter for the season. And that was his exact quote, for the season. So I'm like, once you put Jacoby Brissett out there, what is your end point? I mean, are you rooting for this guy to fail? We're obviously not rooting for him to get hurt, but are you waiting for him to get hurt to bring Drake May in? I just think if Drake May was the better player in preseason, which he clearly was, the coach even said it, and he's the future of this franchise, he looked good. All we heard all offseason was his footwork is bad. Didn't look like that was a problem when he got out there. He looked instinctive. He looked like he processed well. He threw the ball well. He is ready to be out there. I see Jacoby Brissett as a dead-end street. And I don't know how, once you've committed to Brissett, what is your pathway away from him? I think it becomes a little complicated at that point.
Well, in theory, yes, but I think when you look at this Patriots team and this schedule, you say, okay, you throw the veteran out there to start the season, right? Either one of 2 things is going to happen. Either he is going to lead and perform like a veteran quarterback, and you're actually going to do better than you thought, and you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're competing as an organization with this guy, or he's going to get the crap beat out of him. He's going to look bad. You're going to lose games, and it's going to be a very natural transition to your new rookie quarterback. I mean, I kind of look at it, and like the reason I know what you're saying. Gerard Mayo's exact quote was, we support Jacoby Brissett for the season, but I wouldn't expect him to come out and say, hey, look, we support Jacoby for a couple of games until he either screws up or gets hurt, and then we're just waiting for Mac to. Not Mac. We're just waiting for Drake May to get out there. I think you got to say that stuff. I think it's kind of implied that Jacoby Brissett is the sacrificial lamb. He's going to go out there and help this team gel, probably take a beat in the first couple games, all the while knowing that it's his opportunity to prove it and see if he can actually surprise a couple people the first few weeks.
See, I have no problem with redshirting May if he needed it. but I just don't think he needs it, Justin. And that's where I think this just goes to show you what a mess this whole franchise really is right now. Because I think that their quote unquote plan, which they keep referring to, was really to not push May out there at all maybe this year. I think that really might have been the plan, or at least there was no hurry. And then he came out in the preseason and, he kind of played and looked and acted like a guy that was kind of up to the challenge. Yeah. And so now you can't point the finger at Drake May and say he's not ready yet. And to your other point, you said, well, they wouldn't have a bottom 3 pick if they were ready for him. And all the other teams that drafted quarterbacks early have played them early, including last year. All three of the quarterbacks drafted in the top 5 started at some point. Richardson, Bryce Young, and Stroud with varying degrees of success, mind you, but they all got out there. This year, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, both going to be the starters. The pathway, you're not building the 85 Bears or the 2000 Rams, but how about just a respectable team so that you can put your rookie quarterback out there and feel confident that you're not causing long-term damage to his psyche or his on-field play by putting him out there. I mean, they totally dropped the ball on that.
The reason why I'm a little hesitant to agree is because I feel like at the beginning of every Patriots season, I'm a little bit overly optimistic on something that there really isn't much evidence pointing to the fact that I should be overly optimistic. But for me, this season, the thing that I'm a little overly optimistic about, and maybe higher on than the rest of Pats fans, are I think the weapons in this team are actually a little better than we may be thinking. I know some of them are rookies. I know some of them are second-year guys, but I actually think there's a decent talent pool. There's a lot to be proven. We need to see it, but I like Jalen Polk. I like Javon Baker. I like Demario Douglas. I like these guys. And so I think if you give them a couple of days or a couple of weeks to settle in, same thing with the offensive line. I mean, even in the Brady era, even when they had Scarnecchia, it's still the offensive line and that team offense in general didn't look the same the first couple of weeks. I don't know. I'm kind of okay with giving it a couple weeks and then getting Drake May in there and being pleasantly surprised by what this offense looks like when everybody kind of syncs up and has a few games under their belts.
Well, let me ask you this then. Right? Let's say they go 2-2 through the first 4 games and they look decent. What do you do at that point, right? You keep rolling with Brissett. What if they're, 4-3? 5-4. What if they actually do exceed expectations? You've got a lame duck quarterback in there. You're not getting any experience for your future of your franchise. He's not getting reps in practice. He's certainly not getting on the field. You've got Brissett in there. It just leads to a total dead end. Your best case scenario is mediocrity, and you could get in a situation where you have a team that actually isn't that bad, maybe, and you can't pull Brissett out, or it'd be hard to pull Brissett out. Yet, you've really stifled the development of Drake May.
So what? I guess my question is, I feel like we're speaking in terms of it being very black and white when you can pull Jacoby Brissett out, and I know it may not be conventional, but if this team is 5-4 or what have you, something like that, and you're in a situation where, hey, May looks really good, the rest of the offense seems to be gelling. We're itching to get Drake May out there, finish the second half of the season out strong, see if he can take a respectable team that's in the hunt and lead them to a strong finish. Why can't you pull Jacoby Brissett? I guess what I'm saying is, why does it have to be either that he gets injured or the team is god awful in order to make that switch? I feel like we've seen that before. There's a precedent for these mid-season switches, even without catastrophe.
There is, Justin, but I think it's going to be that much harder. If you're still alive in playoff contention, you have to answer to the locker room, first of all. And I think it almost becomes, it makes it a very complicated situation. And you're putting a ton of pressure at that point on Drake May. Okay, we're 5-4 with Brissett. We're still alive. Okay, Drake, now you get out there and you win, and you carry the baton and you make us even better. I don't know if that's a fair position either to put a rookie quarterback in. There's no easy way to get Drake May in there. And like for people, one of the things I think about this whole thing is that Patriots fans just like have this attitude of like, well, if we're not going to contend for a Super Bowl, then why bother? And I think it shows a little in this situation too, because you are not going to be able to store Drake May in bubble wrap and then unwrap him when finally you have a Super Bowl caliber team, and all of a sudden you're going to the next Super Bowl. Like, you have to really put Drake May out there, let him take his lumps, make a lot of mistakes, throw some bad passes, and let him have some process of development and a learning curve on the field before he is actually really gonna be able to meet his potential. And so, like, I find that it would be very valuable to this team to have May on the field, even if they're like 5-12, you know, because he'll be learning like in that process.
He'll definitely be learning. I think it'll definitely be helpful to have him, you know, playing as many games as possible. To what you just said, there really is no like easy answer to this, right? Like, in no matter what you do, like, we could both sit here and say, you know, look, Jacoby being the day one starter, the week one starter, that represents a ton of issues for Drake May in this organization long term, right? We could also sit here and say if Drake May was the week one starter, it represents a whole other set of issues, right? Like, are they risking the health and safety of their young quarterback? Are they going to destroy him mentally? Maybe like what happened to like a Mac Jones, right? There's all these what ifs, and there's no perfect way to go about it. And that's why I think you just have to hope that whatever decision they made, which Gerard Mayo was very clear about saying, and we talked about this as an organization, but this was my decision, right? He was very clear about that. I think we trust, and we have to just say, look, he clearly has weighed out the pros and cons, and he thinks that might be the best route. And there's no perfect way to go about it either way.
I do reject the narrative that somehow if you put Drake May out there too soon, you're going to be like permanently damaging him. I really feel like if he's the real deal, he's going to be able to transcend some adversity. And maybe he's not going to make them into a Super Bowl contender right away, but you'll be able to see him elevate the people around him if he is, in fact, the real deal. Like, I just think, Justin, I said this a few episodes ago, we all have like so much PTSD from the whole Mac Jones experience, and that whole experience of having a guy come in and he looked really good in the first year and we thought we had the guy, and then watching him literally crumble psychologically before our eyes over the subsequent 2 years. I think though there was legitimate deficiencies in Mac Jones's makeup that made it likely that was going to happen at some point, no matter what. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Drake May is a different player. He's not Mac Jones. I think he's more resilient, and I don't think we should be so afraid of doing permanent irreparable damage to him. My sense from watching this league for a long time is that the guys that are going to be successful tend to be successful in any situation, and the guys that are going to fail tend to fail in any situation. I haven't seen many guys that start off being failures and then get removed to somewhere else and end up being successful, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, look, not to say it never happens, but you're right. It doesn't happen.
It's rare.
Often. It's very rare. It is. And and this actually goes back to something that we used to say when Mac Jones was the quarterback, which is, we used to blame the Patriots and say, is Mac Jones' lack of success, this team's lack of success, is Mac really to blame, or is it Bill? Is it the team? Like, you can go back and you can look at it and you can say that, like, look, my argument was always, well, if Mac Jones was the guy, then we would still see a certain amount of elevation being brought to this organization in terms of their performance and their record, right? They may not be Super Bowl contenders. They might not be certified playoff team, but we would see signs that he is the guy, right? Which we never really saw. Right. Even when Mac had that good season, it still wasn't like a definitive, like, performance, and obviously it followed up. He followed it up with 2 shaky seasons. So to bring all that kind of together, even if you throw Drake May out on week 1, even if he's not ready, which we think he is, even if the rest of the offense isn't ready, which they might be, we should still see some signs of positivity that make us believe that into the future we have the right guy.
Exactly. So if he's ready, why not put him out there? Because what else are you doing? Otherwise, you're just wasting time. Brissett's a placeholder. It's just it's a road to nowhere, Jacoby Brissett. I hate to say that because I respect him. I know he's a consummate professional. He was a great Patriot when he was here. He won a game or two for us. That was huge. Fine. We all know he's a placeholder. The only reason Jacoby Brissett was here was, I guess, allegedly, was if Drake May was completely unready to get out on the field.
Right.
And we saw that was not the case this spring. So I don't love that they did this, even in spite of the fact that this team is clearly not ready yet in many ways. And there are clearly major deficiencies and holes on this team. And, in spite of all that, I still think you could make the argument that the right move would be to put May out there right from the beginning and let him sink or swim. And you're going to have to brace yourself for a really tough couple months too, because look, Drew Bledsoe started off 1-11, and he had a great career, right? Peyton Manning led the league in interceptions his rookie year. He became a Hall of Famer. You throw May out there, I can promise you, it's going to be ugly, but it's going to lead somewhere. Yeah. I don't see Brissett doing anything but placeholding, and I think that is it's really just a road to nowhere. That's what I think.
No, yeah, I mean you're 100% right. It in no way, shape, or form is Jacoby Brissett going to be a long-term solution for the Patriots, right? It's not. It's not. I heard someone compare it to maybe like a Geno Smith situation. Well, I think that's ridiculous because when they brought Geno Smith in, they didn't draft a young kid in the first round to succeed him, right? So it's there's clearly a succession plan here for Drake May at some point. So you're right. The Jacoby Brissett road is eventually going to lead to nowhere, whether it's this year or next year, dare I say, if he lasts all the way to next year.
1 year contract.
Right,
so.
right. But yeah, you're right. Totally. So
Brissett was your insurance policy. I mean, that's how I always looked at it in case May wasn't ready yet. But I think I was wrong because obviously in the organization, they I think looked at it differently and they approached it very differently from the start of training camp. I don't agree with the approach. I just don't agree with what they did with Drake May. And, when I really look at it, and one of the things I wanted to ask you about is so at the end of the day, why did they go Brissett besides being a placeholder, besides being a tackling dummy for a really hard 4 weeks, besides the fear of ruining Drake May, which are probably the three most cited reasons? Are there any additional reasons that you go Brissett? And one thing I keep coming back to that concerns me is this whole idea of Alex Van Pelt really being influential in the process, and the way that Brissett is able to run AVP's Brissett is able to run Alex Van Pelt's system. And I just get really concerned about the fact that they're putting so much emphasis on this system from Alex Van Pelt, who is a super unproven offensive coordinator, that maybe they're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe, if Drake May looks good, but he's not as good at running Van Pelt's system, then maybe the problem is the system, not Drake May. Right. I don't know. That's what makes me a little concerned.
But I mean, look, can you see a world though where Van Pelt doesn't make it through this full year?
I could see a world where Van Pelt is the fall guy for if things go really bad this year. Really, if you have a 1-16 season, right? Let's say you have an epically bad season. Someone has to be the fall guy. The Crafts have made so much of an investment in Mayo. I think it would be hard for me to see, no matter what, hard for me to see him being the fall guy, no matter how bad things might go this year. I could totally see AVP being the fall guy.
And it would make sense, right? It would be it'd be a very easy fall guy to kind of set up. And you're right. I mean, the way things are kind of right now, he would be under the gun. And I don't think we've heard a lot of scrutiny towards him. I really haven't heard a ton. Everything seems to be Mayo. Everything seems to be Drake May and Jacoby Brissett. But these coordinators, man, I tell you, there's definitely a lot to be seen on both sides of the ball.
I mean, I think AVP Van Pelt is going to be the whipping boy of Patriots Nation this year. And when things start going bad and they presumably start losing games, okay, I think he will be, if not, I mean, Mayo is going to get a lot of it too, but I think Van Pelt is going to be right up there. Especially, I feel like, look, Mayo can sit up there and say this was his decision to start Brissett, and I think at the end of the day, in a literal sense, it probably technically was his decision. But I think he's getting heavy influence from a lot of people in the organization, such as Van Pelt, Elliott Wolf, the quarterback coach, to go with Brissett.
Right.
And I think that it would have been really hard for Mayo to go with Drake May, even if I think he might have wanted to be honest with you. But I think it would have been really hard to sell that to the guys that he's working with and are working for him. And if this whole thing with Brissett doesn't go well, and this team finds itself 1-5, 1-6, something like that, like Van Pelt is going to be the absolute whipping boy of Patriots Nation.
Yeah, well, especially because Van Pelt and Brissett have a history together, right? From his days in Cleveland. From his days in Cleveland. Yeah. So,
and this system that they're running that is a little different than the system they've run in the past, or many other teams aren't running it now.
Right. Yeah. That's actually one of the things I've heard is that the AVP system is a little outdated. There's not a lot of motion.
It is.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see it. Especially, I look at you got these young guys. You got a couple speedsters. You'd hate to just start them off on the wrong foot with just a stale, outdated offense,
I mean, Brissett is capable of running Van Pelt's system. That's a proven fact. He's done it before. He hasn't done it with great success. He's done it with below average or mediocre play, but he's done it. I'm watching Drake May roll out to the right and throw 40 yards across his body touchdown passes in the preseason.
Right.
I don't think Alex Van Pelt wants that. I think he wants someone to come in and run his system. And that to me is a big problem. When the system is more important, when we're changing the player, Drake May, to fit the system, or putting the system ahead of, the opportunity for May to play and potentially elevate this whole team, I don't love that.
No, I don't love it either. I mean, look, it better work out because, like you said, if not, AVP's in the hot seat big time, and maybe that's by design. Maybe that's intentional.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Let's talk quickly, Justin, about the way Gerard Mayo handled this whole situation, because I have a take on this. So I want to run by you. Mayo, we've talked about it from back when he got hired. He really needs to work on the way that he speaks to the media and how his message is received, and understanding how the things he say can come back to burn him. And sometimes there is a happy medium between being, Bill Belichick, who's a stone wall, and just barfing your truth out to the world, like Mayo has shown a habit of doing. I think Mayo was all over the place this spring and summer with his quarterback thing. I think he created a lot of problems with some of the things he said, including the famous quote of that Mayo outplayed Brissett. I really don't think Gerard Mayo handled this whole thing very well this whole spring. Honest opinion.
It's funny because maybe it's just a Bill Belichick hangover, but I find myself when I listen to Mayo talking, I find myself almost cringing a little bit, and I don't really know why. It's almost just like an innate reaction. It's like I'm just not used to the head coach of the Patriots talking like this and going into as much detail as he does, and feeling the need to be open and honest and explain every little thing. And to your point, I think he may have shot himself at some of the players in the foot because he might have made a little too much public and started some controversy and some conversations that really didn't need to be had.
Well, it's not just you, because I think it's a lot of people, and myself included in that. He is at times, I'm going to use a word that's totally way too young for me to use, cringy. He is cringy at times. He says way too much, and he has absolutely caused a lot of problems and painted himself into a corner a few times Go right back to day one with the "we're going to burn some cash" comment, and then you didn't burn any cash, really.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you got to be really careful about what you say because, yes, is it good to be transparent? Yes. Was Belichick way too extreme to the other side? Yes. But there is a point where the things you say can affect what happens on the field and in the locker room, and you have to be careful. And the quote of Mayo saying that Brissett was outplayed by May is like literally the perfect example of that. Because how do you think that made Jacoby Brissett feel?
Right. And then you go announce him the starter. To the whole first half an hour of this episode that we talked about is essentially created by that comment, right? Because you have a situation where you say, okay, one guy outplayed the other, but the guy who got outplayed is going to be the starting quarterback. Well, clearly there are reasons why that's the case, right? So what are those reasons?
Right. Like you and I and everyone else, we can look at it and say, hey, Drake May looked great in the preseason, but we don't know what we're talking about. Well, when Gerard Mayo comes out and explicitly says that May outplayed Brissett, that gives a lot of credibility and credence and emboldens a lot of people in the media, me and you and everyone else, to say, well, hey, our impressions are right. So why the hell is Brissett out there?
Right. Exactly. So no, he really did kind of bring some of this heat on himself, and I think it's a very fair question. If you're gonna tell us that one quarterback outplayed the other and outcompeted the other, but make the opposite decision, I think it's only fair that everyone's going to want to know, okay, well, what factors went into that decision? Right.
Absolutely. And remember this, Justin, because we're talking about this now when they're 0-0.
Right.
And you take these comments in the context of when they're like 1-5 and how that's going to affect the locker room, because that's when I think it really will have its impact, when they start losing games.
Especially, I mean, I'm even thinking, and look, this is probably, not a very likely scenario, but, you get, if it just so happens to work out where under Brissett, you're 1-3, 1-4, 1-5, and then you replace them with May, and May kind of turns it around, and you wind up missing the playoffs by like half a game or even 2 games, then you're even going to create a bigger problem where you're going to say, okay, the guy who came in and turned the season around, if he was the better quarterback, why didn't he start at the beginning? And then maybe this would have been a playoff bound season, right? Like there's all sorts of trouble he's opening himself up to.
Absolutely agree. So I hope he learns the lesson about just maybe pulling back a little bit. Just pull back a little bit. You don't have to say everything. I mean, another great example, Justin, is a couple things. I can give you 2 more examples. One is, how about how he announces that he's made a decision, but he's not going to tell us who the decision is until the next day.
Right.
And what, you don't have to tell us you made a decision, Gerard. Like, it's okay to say a white lie or just not say it, because it's going to engender a lot of confusion and speculation. I mean, your first obligation is to the locker room. If you're Drake May, right, you don't think you're getting text messages, hey, did you hear from Gerard yet? Because he's, or Brissett, people hear that. It got around. I thought it needlessly created a problem. All he had to say was, we're still considering all our options, and hopefully we'll have an announcement on that later this week. You didn't have to commit to the fact that you've made a decision, but I have to talk to everyone. It's great to be honest, but you didn't have to be that honest.
Is this almost like a little bit of insight into the Gerard Mayo psyche? Is he trying so hard to not be Bill Belichick or to not be associated with Bill Belichick that it's actually manifesting itself in ways that are coming off as strange to the viewing public?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be that. I mean, really, that's a great point. I mean, I do feel like he tries to distance himself from Belichick in some ways. And certainly I think that, I think that he has made it a point, would be my guess, this year to bring open and transparent with the media.
Yeah.
And in one sense, I mean, I listened to his press conferences, and look, they're so much more informative than Belichick's were. It's a breath of fresh air. It's actually worthwhile. I stopped listening for years to Belichick's press because they were pointless.
Right.
It's a breath of fresh air to listen to Mayo, but you can't cross that line of affecting the team adversely, affecting the locker room adversely, and he has to get a better sense of where that point is. One last example, then we're going to move on. What about when he comes out for the press conference where he announced the 2-minute press conference where he announced the decision, and his first opening line is we have decided, or I have decided.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to be careful, because either he dropped a huge bomb, okay, and he was really trying to throw someone under the bus, because he was basically saying it wasn't all my decision, even though it supposedly is my decision, or he just misspoke and stumbled on his words. People ran with that. And I'm sorry, like, the way he said that, it undermined his choice. And that is going to matter when this team is losing games. And if Brissett doesn't play well, you better believe whatever thin level of leeway Brissett had as it was, it's going to be even thinner. It's going to ratchet up the pressure because of comments like that from Gerard Mayo.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a learning experience for him. I hope he kind of figures it out quickly, because to your point, like you said, there's 0-0. As the season goes on, things heat up. It's only going to get more complicated. And, you can't be one of those guys who's kind of, showing your hand too early, or just being overly, effusive with the media, because I think it's just going to come back around and bite you in the butt.
Well, what I hope is that, okay, he's super inexperienced dealing with the media. That's been abundantly clear. I hope he knows more about, like, how to handle 3rd and 7 in the Meadowlands when the Jets are running a cover 2. Like the nuts and bolts about actually managing a football game and coaching. I mean, if he's inexperienced like this in the ways we see, what's going on in the inner workings of the actual product on the field? And is he also equally inexperienced? And You can't help but ask those questions when you're dealing with a guy who's never coached as a head coach before, never called defensive plays before, doesn't know much about coaching offense from his background. It just doesn't look like. I just hope he is better at that stuff than he's been at dealing with the media in the locker room in the summer and spring.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, last point on this one, Justin. My excitement level for this team, and I know they can't make decisions based on the fans. I went from like a 9 to a 4 right when they announced Jacoby Brissett was the starter. I just am not that excited to watch Jacoby Brissett. I thought I would be. When we signed him, I was all for it. I said it'll be fun to root for him. I was wrong. Now that I've seen what I've seen from Drake May, I just don't feel it. And, it really doesn't – I just don't feel that buzz, that pop that I usually feel right before the Pats' first game. It's just really hard for me, and maybe you disagree with this, to get behind rooting for Jacoby Brissett. Be honest with you, like, I'm going to be watching these games, and part of me is going to be rooting for him to not do good, because I want to see Drake May. And I'm never going to say I'm going to root for someone to get hurt. I don't want Jacoby Brissett to get hurt. I never would root for that. That's a terrible thing to say. But I'm also in the back of my head going to be like, how are we getting Drake May in there? And, like, if the door opens for Drake May to get in there, that would be a good thing, I think.
So I don't disagree at all, right? I think, look,
I'm not excited. That's what I'm trying to say.
I definitely agree that the most exciting thing coming into the season was Drake May, right? And I think it still is. Here's the one silver lining, right? Allow me to be the glass half full guy for a second, right?
Please do. Please be the glass half full guy.
Is the fact that there's so many other question marks on the offensive side of the ball, right? Like, and I had mentioned a couple episodes ago, like, I'm super excited to see Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. I'm super excited to see the Pop Douglas second year leap, right? I'm super excited, like, to see some of these new guys in this offense. And I feel like right away, if it was Drake May that was the day one starter, I would have viewed it through the lens of, well, it's tough to objectively assess these new weapons because they're also getting the ball thrown to them from a rookie quarterback, right? I feel like having a veteran in there like Jacoby Brissett, somebody who knows the offensive system, somebody who is comfortable as a starting quarterback, that allows me to assess the rest of this offense, the offensive line, the receivers, Jaheim Bell, the new tight end. Like, it allows me to assess all of them a little bit more objectively when you have a veteran like Jacoby Brissett throwing them the ball. That's the one upside to me, is that if it was Drake May on day one, I wouldn't know how to accurately assess these guys, and that I'd still chalk things up to, oh, this is rookie on rookie action, or this is inexperience and inexperience. But I think it allows me to get a little better look into some of the other offensive groupings.
I mean, that. I feel like you're really grasping for a silver lining there.
I am, but I did say, in all fairness, a couple of weeks ago that I'm very excited about some of these young guys.
You
right?
are, and I mean that's a good point. Brissett's gonna. I mean that's a fair point. Like personally, I would personally rather see May, and I would rather see these guys developing with May.
100%.
And I honestly, Justin, like maybe I'm wrong, but I think, contrary to what was said a few weeks ago, I think May would make these guys better than Brissett will. Like. Yeah. I just saw. I mean, one thing you have to consider in this whole thing is like part of this is that May look good. The other piece of this we really haven't mentioned yet. Brissett looked bad. Like Brissett looked terrible in the preseason. Threw a horrible interception. Got boat raced on a sack. Not all his fault, by the way, but he didn't look great. And it's like it's hard to get excited about a guy that looked that bad in the preseason.
Yeah, I agree. Look, Jacoby Brissett did not light it up in the preseason. I totally agree. I mean, look, there's no way to sugarcoat it, right? Like you're 100% right. Like it's way more exciting to see Drake May and to see Drake May with these guys. But if you had to ask me to find one positive that starting Jacoby Brissett brings to the table, that would be my silver lining. But am I going to sit here and say that I'm more excited to see these young guys with Jacoby Brissett than Drake May? Absolutely not.
All right, well, let's talk about some of those young guys, Justin. I think let's transition a little into talking about the team in general. Yeah. Close the topic on the May Brissett triangle and get into some of the other things on the team. I'm going to start my preview of this team with a take, and you can tell me what you think of this. I've heard a lot of people say that the defense is going to be what carries this team. The offense, is a liability. I think right now, and I will say this right now, I think the defense is going to be a lot worse than people think it is. And I think the offense is going to be a little bit better than what people are expecting. And I'm going to give you reasons for both, okay? Start with the defense. Matt Judon, Christian Barmore. Yeah. I mean, they're two best players, both of them gone. I look at this roster, and I'm like, who are these guys? Like, why do we have so much confidence in this defense when, like, I'm really not sure how many solid, stable, even starting caliber NFL players they really have. They have a few, don't get me wrong, but enough to make me say this is a top 5 or 10 defense? No freaking way. And I look at Christian Gonzalez, which is a name I hear a lot, right? And I'm going to throw you some stats on Christian Gonzalez, okay?
Yeah.
He played really in 3 games last year. 16 of 24 passes were completed against him. So let's stop pretending he was a shutdown cornerback when he gave up a 67% completion percentage. He had a beautiful interception against Tua Tagovailoa, fine. Okay, he still gave up 7 catches against the Dolphins in 9 attempts for 70 yards, 96.5 quarterback rating against in that Miami game that everyone talks about, where he supposedly shut down Tyreek Hill. He really didn't. Right. The week before that, anyone that remembers that Philadelphia game knows A.J. Brown kind of tooled on him. 9 of 13 for 101 yards. Whenever Philly needed a big completion in that game, they went after Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And then they played the lowly Jets in week 3. And that was with Zach Wilson as the quarterback. Even in that, Gonzalez gave up 5 of 8 passes for 45 yards. Not terrible, but not dominant either. And then against Dallas, he got hurt early on. He was out for the year. My point is, I push back so hard on the idea that Christian Gonzalez is a franchise cornerback at this point. We have to see so much more from him. I think he's promising, fine, but we have to see so much more from him before we can rely on him to be the kind of linchpin player that this defense needs. So if he isn't it, who is it? Who is it on this defense? I see a lot of journeymen. I see a lot of okay players. I see the 2 best players gone, not playing this year, or playing for another team. I don't see why people have such confidence in this defense.
I think you're right to be a little skeptical. I mean, I do, at the end of the day, think this is going to be an okay defense. I don't think they're going to be bad by any means, but I agree. You lose Matthew Judon, you lose Christian Barmore. It's got a trickle-down effect, right? Your front 7 becomes a little less dominant, a little tougher for those guys in the secondary to keep up, right? I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if this defense struggled a little bit. And when it comes to Christian Gonzalez, I think you're right. Look, I still think he's a good player. I think we have to assume that he's a good player. But to your point, It's not proven. There's nothing, there's nothing super proven. I think maybe the eye test in the numbers in his first, stint in his limited action, I think they might tell a little bit of a different story, because I think watching the games, right, I think everybody was a little excited about Christian Gonzalez. But to your point, when you peel back those layers and look at some of the numbers under the hood, it maybe wasn't as impressive as we all thought. And without Judon, without Barmore, who is our star in that defense? You're 100% right. I don't think Juwan Bentley's a star, right? I mean, he's good. He's not a star. Kyle Duggar's good. He's not a star.
I mean, he might be the closest one. Duggar and Jabril Peppers. I think they're both high level safeties in this league. But I mean, look at that front seven, Justin. Like who on that front seven now that Barmore and Judon is gone is really like a Pro Bowl caliber type player.
I mean, this is where you need guys like Dietrich Wise and Keon White to really step up.
White.
Yeah, big time. But
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, but I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what, it's still not going to be what this defense was when you had Barmore and Judon.
I mean, I think it's going to be a mediocre defense.
Yeah,
and I'll throw another curveball. I don't know. There were some advanced NFL stats that went around this week. Do you know the Patriots have the toughest? They play the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They ranked which team played the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year statistically, and the Patriots were number one. They play more good quarterbacks this year than any other team in the NFL. They didn't last year, and I think that some of the numbers that we see from them had a lot to do with the fact that they were playing B and C level competition. They're not going to get that this year. In fact, they got a gauntlet. Aaron Rodgers twice, Josh Allen twice, Joe Burrow, even Caleb Williams. You know my thoughts on him, but he's not going to be a total slouch. It is going to be a gauntlet of tough quarterbacks, and that is absolutely going to, I think, make this defense look less effective.
Look, and this has been kind of the timeless tale with this defense going back even the last 4 or 5 years, right? When they were playing bad teams or average teams, mediocre teams, they excelled. When they were going up against some of the better offenses, some of the better quarterbacks in the league, they struggled, right? And this has kind of been the consistent theme with this defense. I mean, I would be very shocked if this defense held up week in and week out against some of these quarterbacks, especially if they're not getting the same sort of help on the offensive side of the ball. Do I think they'll be like a disgraceful defense? No, I don't. But do I think this is going to be the type of defense that could carry an offense like this if they're struggling? No.
Right. I'll put them somewhere in like the 15-ish range, right? Not top 10, not terrible. Like really, I think middle of the pack. And they might actually be a little better than that, Justin.
Yeah.
But the opposition they're playing, they're gonna I think look worse than they are. And I'll say this, like this isn't the kind of defense that can carry you to the playoffs. Like you look at say Pittsburgh last year, who kind of didn't really have a quarterback and was a terrible offense, but they had a really good defense and were able to eke into the playoffs and squeeze out 9 wins. You don't. I don't think you have that here with what the Patriots have. I think it's just a rung or two below that, and I think that anyone that thinks this team is going to be able to, like we both did, frankly, back in the early part of the offseason.
Yeah.
I mean, we've kind of both re-examined that. I think the reality is when you really look critically at it, you look at the schedule, you look at the losses they've had in this offseason, and you have to re-examine that take. Like, there's no way this defense carries this team to the playoffs.
No, I mean,
or anywhere near it.
I think you're right. I think losing both of those guys, it would be silly to say after losing both of those guys that they still have a path forward to having a top 5 defense. I'd still love to be pleasantly surprised, especially with some of the young guys that we're waiting to see. But I think you're right. I think we're looking at an average to slightly above average defense, not a dominant one.
Right. Yeah. And there are holes. There are holes on this defense.
Definitely holes.
There are big holes on this team. A lot of question marks on a lot of these guys. There's a lot of roles that need to be filled, and probably not enough has been said about that this preseason. Now, The offense, I think, is going to be a little better. And let me clarify what I mean by better, because I think last year they were the worst or the second worst offense in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think they're going to come somewhere in the mid-20s. And I think I agree with you. Like, I think they've added some playmaking. They haven't added Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb or anything like that.
Right.
But I think they've added some guys that can do some things. And, you get Kendrick Bourne back. You develop Pop Douglas. I like the Osborne signing. I think Antonio Gibson fills a role. I like the backup tight end, the guy from Atlanta, Austin Hooper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been one of their big holes. They've only had one tight end. I think you add it all up, and the weapons are there. There's a lot of concern about the offensive line. I don't know what your thoughts about this are, but I kind of think the O-line will stabilize as the year goes on. They got some stalwart pieces between Owen Andrews, and I would say City So, if he's healthy. I mean, a lot of teams don't even have that. They got to find an answer at these tackle positions, obviously.
Yep.
But I feel like the offensive line will stabilize as the year goes on.
I do too. I definitely think the offensive line will improve a little bit as the year goes on. There's been a lot of shuffling around. I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered. And I think you can't overstate the fact that a quarterback can either expose or cover up a lot of the mistakes or weak points in an offensive line, right? We've seen it time and time again. Guys like Tom Brady covering up holes in their offensive line, right? By the same token, guys like Mac highlighted and exposed holes in their offensive line, right? Like, the quarterback really does have an impact on the offensive line. And I hope that, they're able to get it around and get it right, and that Jacoby Brissett is able to kind of get these guys situated for the first couple games.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think like, look, I will say the worst position to have a hole is probably left tackle,
for
right?
Sure.
Like, it's probably the most important position. And that's where I think their gaping hole is. Like, I think, Chuks Okorafor, like, I could see him coming in and playing right tackle well. And I really think they have the interior of the line. I think they have the pieces there. They have 3 solid starters and a rookie that looked good in training camp, Layden Robinson. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The left tackle thing, that's the real big question mark going into the season. They've got a lot of lottery tickets right now. Right. You know what I mean? They've got a lot of lottery tickets. They got to hope one of them hits. Is it Caden Wallace? Is it Valerian Lowe? Is it I don't know, someone else emerges. They're able to trade or pick up someone that's cut. I don't know. But I think that if you look across the league, there are a lot of teams that are actually worse off than them overall. It's just that they happen to have a gaping hole at the most important position. That's left tackle.
Yeah. No, I agree with your take that when it's all said and done, this will not be the worst offense in the NFL. I can name a couple off the top of my head that I think are going to struggle more. And you know what? By no means am I expecting this offense to come out and be high flying or put up a ton of points, but I actually think you're 100% right when you say the defense is going to be a little bit more disappointing than people thought, and the offense is going to be a little bit more intriguing than people thought. And really, I think we hopefully will be pleasantly surprised. And who knows, maybe that correlates with a Jacoby Brissett, Drake May switch. Yeah,
maybe, and maybe that will be one of the things that is a linchpin to that. All right, so let me give you let's talk about the final verdict for this team. We've been talking all off season. We've gone step by step, coaching, draft, free agency, mini camp. We've recorded all off season. We've talked a lot about whether we're going over or under on the 4.5. To me, Justin, like, I look at it and I'm like, how is this team going to win games? Like, what is their calling card? And I just don't see it in the context of a pretty tough schedule. To me, the 4.5 over/under win total thing, at the end of the day, it comes down to Drake May. Because I think that if they roll with Brissett all year, I really think they come in under that number. Just because, as I said, I don't think the defense is that good.
Yep.
The offense will be better, but it will still be bad.
Yep.
Brissett is not the kind of player that's going to elevate any team. And, it's a tough schedule. So I see 3 or 4 wins if they go Brissett all year. If May comes in and he looks as good as he did in the preseason, I know it will be choppy, but I think he'll help them win some games if he is what he should be as the number 3 pick or anywhere near it. And if he comes in and plays well and plays most of the year, they'll still be a really bad team because he's not ready yet and they're not ready yet. But I think they could eke out to 5 or 6 wins.
I don't think 5 or 6 wins is out of the realm of possibility for these guys. My fear is that this is going to be a team that's competitive. They find a way to compete in games. They find a way to make games close, but they're just going to come up on the short ends more often than not, right? And I don't know if I would necessarily say that I think Drake May or Jacoby Brissett is better for their win total. I really don't know at this point. I would venture to say, though, that this team is probably a 5-win team, but I could easily see them being a 3 or 4-win team. I could see them being a 6 or 7-win team. I think a lot of it comes down to, we've talked about their offense, we've talked about their quarterback play, but you just mentioned it a few minutes ago. They have a very tough strength of schedule this year. They play a lot of really good quarterbacks, a lot of good established offenses, and you're dealing with rookie weapons, a rookie quarterback, a brand new coaching staff. It's just very tough to see a road where even if these guys surprise us and look a little better than we thought, that they're blowing that win total out of the water.
Yeah, I agree. So are you going to bet the over under or are you fading it?
I'm fading it. I really don't want to touch it. I actually think it's going to be one of the lines this year that Vegas is kind of pretty dead on. I think it's going to be, either way, right around there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to fade it too. Like, I don't think I'm touching it. I would love to take the over, if only for the reason that it would keep me engaged all year.
Yeah.
But it would have to be like one of those things where like I'm taking it knowing that it's not a bet that I like, but rather a bet that I'm taking for my own personal entertainment and my own personal preferences. And I know I'm going to be watching these games in December and November,
right,
and this team might be like 2-9 or something. Like I might need something to keep me motivated. That might be why I might take the over. But in terms of if you're saying like a rational bet, I wouldn't touch it. Now, gun to my head, if I have to choose, I'd take the over. And I would take the over because I really think that Drake May gets in there. I think he's going to be good. I think he showed me a lot this preseason. And I think that they will develop the O-line. They will develop some of these young weapons. May will come in and they will steal a few wins coming down the stretch.
I hope they do. The last couple of years, you had the fortune of saying, at least I was chalking up both games against the Jets as 2 wins for the last couple of years, right? Zach Wilson, super dysfunctional. I was kind of always, when I was factoring the Patriots over under, giving them 2 wins right off the bat for both the Jets games and saying, hey, they just need to find a way to steal a couple from some of these other teams, right? But the Jets are a much better team this year. There's no games in their schedule that are gimmies. I think we've talked about it before. I believe they're underdogs in every single game on the schedule.
Every game. The Pats are underdogs in every single game.
Exactly.
And also, we're going to talk about some odds and stuff later, but if you look at the conference winner props on DraftKings at least, and I think this is true pretty much everywhere more or less, the Patriots are last in the NFL at plus 30,000. Carolina is plus 25,000 to win the NFC.
Yeah.
The Patriots are plus 30,000. The Patriots are the biggest long shot in the NFL to win their conference. And I mean, and I was really shocked, not that they were in that wheelhouse, but that they were that far behind even lowly Carolina.
Right.
That says a lot.
It does. The only thing I could think of there is just the strength of the division in the conference that Carolina's in. But I mean, you're right. But it really does put it into perspective when you say, wow, the Patriots, I get it. Yeah, there's other factors, but the Patriots are being given the worst shot in the NFL to win their conference.
Absolutely. Well, look, we've talked Pats for almost an hour. Let's talk a little bit about around the league. We still have a lot to get to. So let's move. You want to move to some of the other stuff and some of the other teams and kind of just blast through a few of these divisions.
Yeah, let's
that
do
we
it.
haven't talked about yet. So I'm just going to go division by division. I go with the question answer format to each team just to kind of give us something good to talk about. So let's start with the NFC East. And Dallas Cowboys, I think, are in a real dilemma with what to do about Dak Prescott. I love Dak Prescott as a player, and I think they would be crazy not to pay Dak Prescott because it can be so much worse. Will the Dallas Cowboys, Justin, pay Dak Prescott this year?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say
no.
let him
walk?
I think they potentially let him walk. I mean, look, they've made a big decision not to pay him up until this point, right? I think if any deal gets done at this point, I think it's going to be after the season. I think they really want to see what he can do this year. I mean, not like they haven't had enough time and enough opportunity to kind of see what he's made of, but Dak Prescott is to me personally, one of the most complicated situations in the league where all I hear about is how talented he is. All I hear about is his stats. All I hear about is he's capable of this, he's capable of that. But I just can't remember ever seeing this guy and thinking that this is a dominant quarterback that I want on my team. In a big game, I want Dak Prescott to be my starting quarterback. And he's collapsed in the playoffs. He's collapsed. They haven't really done anything with him other than a couple of regular season throwaway stats and awards. I don't know. I'm very confused by the whole Dak situation. I don't think they pay him this year. I think if anything, maybe they re-sign him in free agency. But
I don't understand why Dak Prescott gets looked at like that. You could have just made the same exact argument for Lamar Jackson, and yet he's like revered and a 2-time MVP. And it's sports writers that vote for the MVP. So don't tell me that because the guy wins an MVP, he's necessarily a better player. Like what has Lamar Jackson done that Dak Prescott hasn't, more or less? I mean, besides winning MVPs.
Well, that's really what it comes down to. And I don't pay much stock into Lamar Jackson's MVPs either, because at the end of the day, like these guys don't suit up and play to win regular season games and to put out you know what I mean? Like they play to win the Super Bowl, or at least they should be playing to win a Super Bowl. That should be the ultimate goal. And when teams aren't able to win in the playoffs, when teams aren't able to win in big games, when teams aren't able to show that they're capable of contending in a serious level, like how else? The rest doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't really matter until I see one of these guys go to a conference championship game and either win it or come damn near close to winning it. I'm gonna reserve my opinion. I mean,
Dak Prescott threw 38 touchdown passes last year. Like, I think that counts or something. Anything you could say about him not winning, you could say about Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen has some epic losses in the playoffs. I am not giving up on a guy that can perform and produce like that. I wouldn't do it. Like, I think Dallas is making a huge mistake. You've got to pay him. And I think, and take your chances. You give up on him, and what do you have left? You're going to take, like the next journeyman guy. Maybe Jacoby Brissett can go to Dallas next year. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it could be so much worse.
Look, should Dallas pay him, and what do I think Dak's ceiling is two different questions, right? Like, if you had to ask me, is Dallas better off with Dak Prescott or better off rolling the dice in the draft next year? They're better off with Dak Prescott. But I find it tough to see a world where all of a sudden Dak Prescott goes out and wins a Super Bowl. I just do. I just think I think we've seen his potential. And same thing, like I think we've seen a lot of these guys' potential, which is they're good quarterbacks. They can show greatness at times, but they have a very difficult time carrying that torch from start to finish, dominating from start to finish, and beating the true, look, it goes back to even when Brady was in the league. These guys weren't beating Brady. Mahomes, these guys aren't beating Mahomes. Like, somebody has got to show me that they can take down the top dog and be dominant from start to finish. And the only person that I will put The only two people that I will exclude from this category for me are Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford. And that's just because Stafford won a Super Bowl and Joe Burrow realistically was one penalty call away from winning that Super Bowl and then one penalty call away from going back to the Super Bowl the following year. So I keep Burrow and Stafford in a different tier right below Patrick Mahomes. Everybody else, I look at them and I say, their potential might just be good, not great.
So what do you think about this Dallas team? You think, I mean, a lot of people are predicting them to take a step back this year.
Yeah.
I look at this NFC division. I see a weak division.
I do too.
I see a Philadelphia team with a lot of questions. I see a Giants team that is maybe the worst team in football, are going to be right in there for it. And I see a Commander team that's still rebuilding with a rookie quarterback. So as much as I think Dallas, really, they're like CeeDee Lamb and nothing else on offense. Like, you know, if he gets hurt, they're screwed.
Yep.
I still think almost by default, they're going to win 10, 11, 12 games. Weak conference, weak division, good but not great quarterback, fine. I think that's enough to get you double-digit wins this year.
They could easily find themselves in the playoffs. I mean, I don't think Dallas – I've heard a lot of people say they think Dallas will take a step back. I don't know how much of a step back it'll be. Like, I think maybe they'll, you know, I could see them being a 9-10 win team versus like an 11-12 win team. But I do still think they'll be in playoff contention. I think, like you said, the division's weak. I think the conference in general is a little bit weak.
It still is.
It is. And this is a team that at the end of the day, like you said, they have a decent quarterback. They have a decent defense. They're in a not super competitive division. And when you got those three things going for you, there's no reason why you can't compete. But just to address the other side of the coin, I think Mike McCarthy's a bum. Okay. Yep. I think the culture in that organization and in that locker room, starting with Jerry Jones all the way into their practice squad, I think is ass backwards. Okay. I mean, you've heard tons of issues, you know, stemming from like the Micah Parsons podcast and other teammates' comments and all that stuff. I think the culture sucks. I think the coach sucks. And I think their depth is a little bit lacking, right? Like, you know, you got
and don't forget the Jerry Jones factor too, because you talk a lot about Mike McCarthy. We haven't talked enough about Jerry Jones. Like, how about Dak Prescott saying today he learned a long time ago not to listen to anything Jerry Jones says in the media? Like, wow, like what a shot across Jerry Jones's bow. That's the owner who is potentially going to be signing your next contract, who just gave you like $200 million 3 years ago, and you're basically just saying, I don't listen to this guy. That's a messed up culture right there.
Very messed up culture. That's my biggest beef with the Dallas Cowboys is I think it's a team with a losing, dysfunctional culture, and I think it starts at the very top, works its way down with the coach, and extends itself into the locker room. That's my biggest issue with Dallas.
No doubt. All right, so for NFC East, I'll tell you my take on this division quick. I like the Philadelphia Eagles to bounce back. I do think it's really intriguing. Because the Philadelphia Eagles last year crashed and burned as badly as any team that I can remember.
They did
in recent NFL memory. From a team that went from literally top of the league, Super Bowl contender, to a tailspin over the course of 6 to 7 weeks after losing a few really close games, if you remember, that they could have won. And it just felt like it was a locker room implosion. It did not feel all physical. It felt like it was a psychological thing. There's tension between the coach and the quarterback. It seeped into the play on the field, and they got their ass served to them against a pretty mediocre Tampa Bay team that had won 3 less games, oh, by the way, in the regular season than they did. I think one of the big stories of this year is can Philadelphia bounce back and get back to what they were, where they had almost won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, where they were the best team in the league the first 10, 11 weeks last year. And to me, I'm going yes on that one, Justin. I think they're still the best team in the division.
I think they're still the best team in the division too. I'm not sold on Nick Sirianni. I'm not sold that all the problems that derailed them, which to your point, it was a culture problem and it was a mental toughness and a mentality problem, right? That's what derailed the Eagles last year. I'm not confident that that's fixed. I'm not confident that Nick Sirianni's the right guy, but I just look up and down at that roster and they just have too much talent on both sides of the ball. They got even better this offseason than they were last year, talent-wise. And they are, again, in a weak division, just like the Cowboys. I think the Eagles, even if they don't have a full bounce back, I think this team still wins the division. And then I think it goes Dallas, Washington, and the Giants.
And I'll say one more thing about that team, which is, look, I'm a skeptic of the whole Saquon Barkley thing, but the thing about it in Philadelphia is he doesn't have to carry the load.
No.
They got plenty of weapons to take some of the pressure off him. And I think that is probably, at this point in his career, that's really what Saquon needs. I wouldn't expect him to be Walter Payton this year, but can he be part of the redemption story there? I think absolutely yes. So I like that Philadelphia team. My last little NFC East take there, we're going to move to the AFC East very quickly, is Bill Belichick will be coaching the NFC East next year, but it won't be for the Eagles. It'll be for the Giants. That's going to call all year long. Wait and see.
All right. Well, hey,
what a story that will be.
Yeah.
But to the point of the Eagles, like, you're already hearing Belichick's name.
Yeah.
For the Eagles, I mean, that's hanging over Nick Sirianni's head. So
absolutely.
It thickens the plot a little. All right, AFC East. We're not going to talk about the Pats. We already talked about them extensively. Couple takes on the AFC East, Justin. I think this year is a huge litmus test for Josh Allen. You look at his 2019 season, pre-Stephon Diggs, he was good, but he wasn't great. They threw Stephon Diggs in the mist, and he became one of the best players in the league. Now Stephon Diggs is gone, replaced with a rookie. I don't really see them having a stable, reliable, NFL-proven wide receiver on that roster right now, unless you count Curtis Samuel, who's a player I like, but I don't know if I can say he's, a guy that you can count on if you're a Super Bowl contender. This year really is about what Josh Allen can do, and can he keep that team a contender single-handedly, a la Mahomes did last year.
I'm not that high. Look, I think the Bills and Josh Allen, I think this is the year they take a step back. And there's just too much going against them. I mean, they had a ton of turnover on offense. They've had a ton of turnover on defense. They've lost a bunch of studs. They've lost a bunch of weapons. They're dealing with another devastating loss in the playoffs to the same guys that have been the bane of their existence. Like, this team, I really do just feel like we're going to start to see them crack a little bit. The pressure's on Josh Allen like never before. The pressure's on Sean McDermott like never before. And when the pressure's at its highest for both the coach and the quarterback, the team and the roster is at its weakest. And I think that this organization has to feel so defeated from just how they've ended the season the last couple of years. That all, I think, plays a toll. Do I think they'll be a bad team? No, but I think this is going to be a team that struggles to make the playoffs. That's my opinion.
You think they might not be a playoff team?
I think they're going to be a borderline playoff team. I would not be shocked at all if the Buffalo Bills sat on the sidelines this postseason.
Now, all right. So who wins the AFC East then? You're picking the Jets?
I'm actually, look, I still am not sure if I'm going to go Jets or Dolphins. I think if the Dolphins can stay healthy. Well, the one thing with the Dolphins last year that kind of derailed them was that defense fell apart, right? They lost Bradley Chubb. They lost Jalen Phillips. They lost a couple guys in their secondary. If that defense can stay healthy, I love what they did bringing in Jonnu Smith at tight end. I love what they, Devon Achane looks like he's back ready to have a breakout year. Like, I don't know. I think Miami and the Jets could both be easily the winner of the AFC East. And I think both of them have a better chance of making the playoffs than the Buffalo Bills do.
Is it possible, Justin, because this is kind of where I am with the AFC East right now, like, I think the Jets, I hate to say this, because I kind of want to see the Bills win. I just feel like it would be a good story, and I feel like they deserve it. But I agree with you. The window is, if it's open, it ain't open much for them right now. And they're probably not a Super Bowl contender because of the lack of skill position talent. Is it possible that the Jets could win 10 or 11 games and win the AFC East and the Aaron Rodgers thing still fail? Like, is that mutually exclusive? We've seen this Jets team be a borderline playoff team with freaking Zach Wilson as a quarterback, Mike White, Joe Flacco, a lot of talent on the team, terrific defense. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to work out the way that some people expect that he will, but I still think they could win 10 or 11 games, even where they suboptimal Aaron Rodgers and potentially that division.
I don't disagree with that, but would it still be a failure? I think so, because I look at this and I say, you didn't bring a 40, who was he, 40 when they signed him? Or 40, 41 when they signed him? You didn't bring a 41-year-old quarterback in because you have a 5-year growth plan, a 7-year growth plan, right? And you're trying to engineer an era of dominance and contention. You bring a 41-year-old quarterback in because you look at it and you say, we have a very limited window with this group of guys, with our quarterback, to make a run at a Super Bowl. And if they don't win a Super Bowl, or at least make it close to a Super Bowl, I think it's going to be an epic failure, because you didn't bring Aaron Rodgers in and pay him all that money. And don't forget, like, it's not like the Jets have the next guy sitting there on the sideline waiting, right? They don't have a Drake May or a Caleb Williams or an Anthony Richardson or a CJ Stroud on the sidelines waiting for Aaron Rodgers, right? So you put all your eggs in this basket. If the farthest he takes you is 11 wins in a playoff berth, that's a failure to me.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think it's a failure too. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you didn't bring in Aaron Rodgers to squeak out a division and bow out in the first or second round of the playoffs. That's not what this was about. But that's what I feel like, which way this is trending. Like, Aaron Rodgers, even at 41, is still probably a pretty damn good quarterback. But he's not what he was 5 years ago. And it doesn't feel like he's totally committed or dedicated. He doesn't get along with Robert Saleh. They kind of went back and forth a little in the media. He's coming off a major injury. Like, you could get 80% Aaron Rodgers, still be a good team. But that's 80% Aaron Rodgers might make you better. It's probably not going to be enough to take you to a Super Bowl. That's where I think this Jets team is right now. So I am going to pick them, I think, to win the AFC East. Yeah. But that's just really more a statement of the fact that AFC East is not the division that a lot of people think it is.
I agree completely. I think it's going to be I would probably give it a 51-49 edge to the Jets at this point in my mind, between the Jets and the Dolphins. But I don't think it's going to be a super dominant division like people were thinking it might be. And I think the Bills find themselves the odd man out. I think the AFC is too good in general. It's too good of a conference. I don't think you're going to see 3 playoff teams come from the AFC East. I think you'll be lucky to see 2 come from the AFC East. So yeah, I right now I get the Jets, I get the Dolphins, then I get the Bills and the Patriots.
Okay, let's go to the AFC North. And I think, this is an intriguing division. You could argue this is one of the better divisions in football. I, Justin, wonder, and I think, the Ravens made a big move this offseason, signing Derrick Henry. Yeah. Let's not forget they also lost one of their best defensive players to their division rival, and Patrick McQueen, really a terrific linebacker. Yeah. To me, that's a bigger loss than the gain of Henry is. Derrick Henry's one of these guys, we've said it before, he's going to fall off a cliff, whether it's this year or next year. He is really taking a pounding in his career. How he fits in with this whole Ravens thing, I think, is intriguing. And, I wonder, Justin, if the Ravens championship window is closing as well right now. They've certainly had a few bites at the apple. Lamar Jackson has been unable to win in the postseason. Do you think the Ravens post-Super Bowl window is still open? I think the Ravens win this division. Let me say that. I think they win this division. But that's really not enough for what they're looking for. They've won divisions. They want to win a Super Bowl in Baltimore. And I think the time is now for them. I don't know if they have that kind of team. I think you could argue their window is closing.
I think it is definitely closing, but I still think it's open for this year. One of the things that I don't think gets talked about enough of the Baltimore Ravens, and trust me, I'm on board with you. Lamar Jackson still has a lot to prove, especially in the playoffs. The one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough is the devastating injury history that this team has had the last couple of years on both sides of the ball, both offensive and defensive, right? And so to me, my biggest question mark about this Ravens team is, can they stay healthy? Because they have a good roster. And I think Derrick Henry is just going to open things up for Lamar Jackson, and they're both going to feed well off of each other and what they're able to do for each other. But it really comes down to, can their skill players stay healthy? I mean, you had guys like Mark Andrews missing most of last year. They've had troubles with their running backs in the past. I mean, they lost, I think, like Marlon Humphrey and a couple of their key guys on defense last year. So, like, if this team can stay healthy, I think they still have a window open for this year. But it is closing. It's closing quickly, and I think the pressure's on them.
I mean, let's put it this way. Like, if the window is open, it's because Lamar Jackson is, like, holding it open. And I don't know if he is the kind – I mean, if he's quite at that level anymore where he's going to be able to keep that window open for much longer. You know, like, I think given the way he plays the game, and I've always said to you, I think Lamar Jackson is a much better passer than people give him credit for. I think his game goes way beyond his mobility. But I think what makes him that elite player is the mobility piece of it. And as that starts to diminish, and I think you're already seeing it a little. I think you already started a little last year. I don't know if he's going to be quite at that level where he can take a team with a lot of deficiencies and keep it a Super Bowl contender a la Patrick Mahomes at this point anymore. So who are you going with in that division, Justin? You're going Ravens?
I'm going to go. I'll go Ravens. Again, health is a big question, but I'm going to go Ravens. Then I'm going to go Bengals. Then I'm going to go Browns. Then I'm going to go Steelers.
I like that order. I got one more take for you. You know, Mike Tomlin is famous for always being above 500. This is the year it falls apart to me.
Yeah. I think
this year falls apart.
They got pretty lucky last year. I still think they got the worst quarterback in the division, right?
Yes.
And you know what? They may have a good coach and a good defense, but I think the rest of the teams have a good coach and a good defense. And you got the worst quarterback. And I think it's going to come back and bite you a little bit. I think you're playing in a really tough division, and it's going to be tough to keep your head above water if you got Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
I mean, we've talked about a lot about how the Patriots are derelict on the offensive line issue, and that's 100% true. But like, if you're a Steelers fan, like, how do you feel about the Steelers going into this year with this quarterback situation? And you've got a team that is a pretty well-built team at every other spot on the field, and you don't make any kind of move to bring in a young quarterback, to bring in an experienced veteran. I know they brought in Russell Wilson. I don't think he really quite cuts it. You know, like you had Kirk Cousins, you had other players available. Bo Nix went 12. Penix was there at 8. I mean, you maybe have to trade up, but like the Pittsburgh Steelers have no plan whatsoever at quarterback.
They don't. It was they slapped 2 Band-Aids on it with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. That's
totally. Yeah, and I'm tired of hearing about Justin Fields' potential because I just don't see it. I mean, beat up by Russell Wilson again this year. Come on, man. Okay, let's talk quickly, Justin, about AFC South. I don't have much to say about this division. You know, I think that I'm not high on Indy. I think Anthony Richardson completed 51% of his passes in college. I think he's going to be a fun player to watch, but it's not always going to be for good reasons. I think he'll make big plays and great plays, and he'll make some bad plays. I'd put him in the wheelhouse of a Jameis Winston as a guy that, you know, is going to be exciting, right? But is going to have some epic screw ups. So I don't know. I guess in this division, I'm probably going to begrudgingly take Houston, and probably that be the only playoff team that I see coming out of it.
I agree. I think Houston wins this division. I think they're the only playoff team. I think Indy will be fun to watch for a little bit. I think they'll probably come in second. Jacksonville, Jacksonville come in third. Probably Tennessee coming in last. I think it'll be a crapshoot, but I do agree with what you said that I think there will only be one playoff team from this division. And I think the Texans have shown they got the best quarterback, they got the best all-around team, and they got one of the best coaches. So I'm going with the Texans to have a big year.
Isn't there just a part of you, like, call it morbid curiosity? Doesn't just a part of you, I'm not rooting for anyone to get hurt, but wouldn't you love to see Mac Jones have a little run here with the Jaguars? Just like the curiosity in you to see, like, what happens if Mac goes out there with another team and what he looks like. with a good head coach and some good players around him, what's it going to look like?
I would like to see it. He didn't look awful in the preseason. Obviously, preseason, but yeah, it'll be very interesting, especially since his backup in him the guy starting ahead of him and him have almost identical stats since they both
identical career stats.
Yeah.
Not enough is said about that. We've talked about it many times. Mac Jones still has the highest quarterback rating on the Jacksonville Jaguars for his career.
Yeah,
and a better win-loss record.
Yep.
All right, and then NFC South again. I think kind of a boring division. Everyone likes Atlanta. I like that Tampa Bay team too. Kind of go back and forth. I'm probably going to pick Atlanta in that division. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender by any means, but I think they'll be a much better team. And I think, again, probably a one playoff team division in the NFC South, and that's the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Falcons win it just because I think they're the most talented team in that division. I think they probably get the best quarterback. Bucks probably coming second. I think Dennis Allen with the Saints is one of the first coaches fired this season. I think he's in the hot seat. I think he's going to be one of the first coaches fired. And then I think, Saints and then the Panthers, I think, will be the worst.
I mean, the Saints might be the most boring team in the NFL right now.
Very boring. Very boring.
As bad as things are here in New England and the Giants, there's at least storylines.
Yeah.
I honestly had a hard time even thinking of what is one storyline you can talk about with the Saints? It's just a tepid franchise.
Totally agree. Although I do, his name, I don't know why his name's escaping me at the moment, but backup quarterback for New Orleans, look out for him. Spencer Rattler, that's who it is. Spencer Rattler's my dark horse rookie quarterback this year. I'd love to see him get a chance to run that offense. I think that's the only thing I'm excited about in New Orleans. I think the rest is, like you said.
I think there's a realistic chance you'll see him at some point this year.
I do too. Yeah.
Derek Carr is just, I'm sorry. He's toast. He's over.
Talented loser. We've been saying it for years.
Talented loser. So I'm going to go Atlanta in that division. Okay. Super Bowl pick, Justin. We got to go on the record and say what we got. Let me say, for me, I'll go division winners, Eagles, Rams, Lions, Falcons. In the NFC, I'm going to take Cardinals, Cowboys, and 49ers as my wild cards. I like that Cardinals team. Call me crazy. Jets, Chiefs, Ravens, Texans in the AFC. Wild cards for me are Bills, Bengals, and Broncos. And for my Super Bowl, I would love to pick a Buffalo-Detroit Super Bowl, but I just don't think Buffalo has it this year. I'm going Kansas City, Detroit as my Super Bowl, and I'm going to say it. This is the year. Detroit Lions, Super Bowl champions. It will be national story. America's team will win the Super Bowl this year.
So
and that is the Detroit Lions.
I love that pick with the Lions. I think I got the Lions going to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. Obviously, they still got to get through a couple of teams, but I think that's a team. When you go through a loss the way they did in the conference championship last year, it either makes or breaks a team. And that's a team that I think is mentally tough. They got the right coaches. They got the right leaders. They got the right talent. I think that's a team that comes out this year on a mission. I think they're hungry. 14 out of 17 games in a dome. That's where Jared Goff and this offense thrives. I like the Lions to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. Out of the AFC, this might not be the sexiest pick out there, but I think we got a wild card team coming out of the AFC. I think it's going to be a Lions, Bengals Super Bowl.
Okay.
I love the Bengals. I think at the end of the day, Joe Burrow, I think is outside of Patrick Mahomes, is the best playoff quarterback in the AFC. I think if everybody stays healthy, they're going to be able to put it all together. It's the last run they're going to have with both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I think they're going to come out and sling it. Joe Burrow is finally healthy. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people, and I think they're going to turn it on for the playoffs, just like they have the last couple of years when healthy. So I got a Lions-Bengals Super Bowl, and similar to you, I'm going to go with the Lions winning.
I love it, Justin. It's just really hard for me to not pick the Chiefs as much as I don't want to pick them, because I just love what they did this offseason, and I think probably for the first time, I will be rooting against the Chiefs. Yeah. Because now I'm starting to feel like they might potentially infringe on the Patriots.
I know.
Dynasty and Mahomes on the GOAT with Brady. I don't even want to get close to having that discussion as a Patriots fan. But, I can't deny the fact that I just feel like that team is the far and away the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, it's not crazy to say at all. They'll still be in the playoffs. The question will be, can somebody take them down? And that's another reason why I'm picking the Bengals, because to date, that's the only quarterback in the AFC that's taken down Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think it's going to be an easy task to do. But nevertheless, that's what I got. I got a Lions-Bengals Super Bowl. Lions taking it home.
Love that pick. Okay, and then we said we were going to do some gambling stuff. We have only a few minutes left. I'll blast through some stuff. Before I even get there, we have to talk a little about this. Well, let's do the gambling stuff first, then we'll talk very quickly about Pats Bengals, and then we'll wrap it up, okay? Some of the props that I like, and you can just tell me what you think about a few of these. I put $100 on Bryce Young to be comeback player of the year at plus 10,000. Now, that's kind of crazy, right? But they've kind of rebuilt that team, okay? They brought in a couple offensive-minded coaches. They play in a weak division. You're talking about turning 100 into 10,000. It's a long shot, I admit it. But if you're looking for a long shot, why not Bryce Young as NFC Comeback Player of the Year? Or NFL Comeback Player.
You know what? I love the value there. I think it's great value. That's what it is.
Sucks.
It's value. You got a second-year quarterback. They gave him a bunch of weapons on offense, bunch of new weapons. The value is there. I just have a very tough time seeing that Panthers team, perform to a level where Bryce Young can get that award. But you know what? I don't hate it at all. I think like you said, there is some really good value there. I'm looking at the odds right now. I got him. I think it's probably gonna be a quarterback, right? That's my gut. I think it's gonna be Kyler Murray plus 2,000.
That's a great pick.
I love Kyler Murray this year. I'm all over him, super high on him. And to your point, I think that Cardinals offense is going to be a lot better than people think. I think they're going to be slept on.
Justin, everyone laughed at me. I took Marvin Harrison with my second round pick. I was like the number 19 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
I love that offense this year. I think Kyler Murray, I'm not saying he's a great quarterback, but he might be a great fantasy quarterback, and they're going to put up big numbers.
Yes, they are. And when you got a guy who can rush it like he can, now especially another year healthy off that injury, I look for big things out of Kyler this year.
Oh, okay, how about this one for value? And I think this is a little bit to do with the fact that he's the favorite for the MVP. But how about Offensive Player of the Year? Patrick Mahomes is 5,500, plus 5,500 to win Offensive Player of the Year. So you can turn 100 into 5,000 if Mahomes wins Offensive Player of the Year. I thought that was a good value play.
Again, that's good value. Great, it's great value. And is it crazy to think that the Chiefs and Mahomes could get back to where last year was a fluke season. If you look at all the stats, right, since Mahomes came into the league with the Chiefs, and last year was a fluky season for them stats wise. So that offense should bounce back this year. It is really good value. Offensive Player of the Year, I think it's going to be really tough. I'm going to set my sights on on Bijan Robinson. I think this is a huge Bijan Robinson year.
What's his number at, Justin?
He's plus 1,800 right now. Yeah. I think this is a guy who has all the talent in the world. He was held back by Arthur Smith last year. That offense is going to be even better. I think he's going to explode onto the scene this year.
That's a solid pick, and I think decent value at plus 1,800. That's probably worth a shot. Okay, how about Offensive Rookie of the Year? I like Bo Nix at plus 1,000. I think that's good value. He's going to start. He's got some good weapons there. They're going to throw the ball. Everyone's going Caleb Williams. I don't love that pick. He's a favorite. I'd stay away from it. I think there's way too much expectation for that guy. But I like what Bo Nix as a value play in Denver.
I love the Bo Nix play. I think he's going to be a lot better than people thought this year. I think that Broncos team is going to be a lot better than people thought. Arguably, I think he may even be, dare I say, the best rookie quarterback this year. Dare I say it? I know it's not the odds-on favorite, but I really like what Bo Nix is doing. I'm looking at it right now. I think if it's not Caleb Williams, it's going to be tough for me to find a world where it's not Bo Nix. The only non-quarterback that I could see it being is potentially Malik Neighbors. I think Marvin Harrison is a better player than Malik Neighbors, but I think the Giants just have so little on that team that if Malik Neighbors stays healthy, they're going to force feed him the ball every opportunity they get. So I don't hate
that. My concern with Neighbors is like he's got no one to get him the ball, and I mean you could have Tommy Cutlets thrown to that guy by like week 7. So I didn't think the odds were that great either. I think he's one of the favorites.
Yeah, he's plus 1,400, nothing crazy.
The other guy I thought you were going to say would be Xavier Worthy, and I don't think he's got great odds, but I think they're like plus, maybe what was he like plus 1,200 or something like that for Worthy.
I'm just out on Chiefs weapons at this point. I've seen what they've done with all their receivers. I mean, it's like you don't know who is going to show up in any week. They got Sky Moore, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, like all these. They use like 6 or 7 guys interchangeably. It's tough to peg a guy as the guy. But it's like
a share the wealth kind of offense.
Exactly.
Generally speaking, yes. I agree with that. Okay, and then one more for you. I mean, I could talk about props. We could do a whole show on props if we wanted to. Sean McVay, how about him for Coach of the Year? Again, I think good value at plus 3,000. I see a pathway for the Rams to maybe have a really good year this year. I know it's a little bit of a tough division, but that team was not far from a Super Bowl. They've kind of rebuilt that defense. Matt Stafford is healthy. Cooper Kupp is healthy. They've got weapons on that offense. I don't think it's totally remote a scenario that Sean McVay and the Rams could have a really good year this year, and people at the end of the year are looking at McVay as a Coach of the Year.
I think they easily could. I actually love the value there. He's plus 3,000. I think McVay and the Rams are going to be good. I think McVay is just proven to be one of the better coaches in the NFL, one of the more consistent coaches in the NFL. Another name I'll throw out there, going back to the offensive rookie of the year, is I'll throw out Sean Payton. I think you could have a little Sean Payton, Bo Nix little.
What's his number, Justin?
Sean Payton right now is plus 2,000, so better odds than
bet.
McVay, but it's still good value.
Yeah, I mean that's a great bet. You don't want to take the favorite. You're looking for those kind of middle odds plays where you're getting a good return, but you're not taking like what I just did. It was like the Bryce Young plus 10,000. Okay, that sounds great, but that's like a remote scenario. You could see a real path for Sean Payton to win Coach of the Year this year. Like it's not inconceivable.
Yeah, totally agree. I like both of those.
How about MVP, Justin? Who do you like for that? We got to do that.
Who do I like for MVP? Let's see. MVP's tough. I'm gonna go with. I think it could be a Kyler Murray MVP year. What's his number? I think Kyler Murray he's plus 5,000 right now. I could just see him having a monstrous year. Yeah. And you know what? I think he's one of those guys that is, especially, we've seen the league falling in love with these two-way quarterbacks. If he can put up some big numbers, rushing and passing, and he can make this Arizona team respectable, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
See, I like what you're thinking, but I just feel like that number should be higher. I feel like it should be 7,000 or 8,000. You're talking about a guy that's a true long shot. So it's a good bet, but it might not be a good value play.
Exactly.
You might want to shop around a little.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the other bets now. I mean, none of the other value is really that great. I mean, I see guys like CJ Stroud plus 800, Joe Burrow plus 950, Jordan Love 1,400. So Kyler Murray plus 5,000, not awful, but to your point, yeah, I mean, maybe the
how about Jared Goff plus 2,000? That's one I thought was decent value.
It is decent value. And look, I mentioned it earlier, Jared Goff and the Lions. Jared Goff thrives indoors. He thrives in domes, and they got 14 out of 17, in a dome this year. So plus he's got a high-powered offense coming back.
High-powered offense, exactly. Okay, so we got to wrap it up, but very quickly, Justin, Patriots-Bengals this week. What do you see happening? I don't know if we'll see Jamar Chase. That's probably the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause about which way I'm going on this is the fact that the Bengals are dropping the ball in this Jamar Chase thing. I think, it just shows you the Bengals don't really take the Patriots all that very serious, because I think they'd have their shit together and this figured out if this was a real opponent in their eyes. I see this as just a absolute drubbing for the Patriots. I think this is if you could have a get right game in week 1 for the Bengals, this is it. I look at this as like a 38-14 Bengals win. I got to be honest with you. I know you don't.
So I actually already locked in Patriots plus 10.5. I don't think that they'll probably win the game, but look, we've seen the Bengals start out slow in the last couple of years. Who knows if Jamar Chase will be out there? If he is, he hasn't practiced or played all offseason. They got a new running back. There's just, I think, they got some new pieces of that offensive line. And I think the Patriots are gonna come out with some energy, with something to prove. I think Gerard Mayo's gonna have them all fired up. I don't think they'll win the game, but I could easily see him covering a 10.5 point spread.
Well, look, I'll say this. I don't love the bet, but I think it's great value. If you can get that number at more than 10 points, I feel like that's a good value play, right? In the sense that you're getting a great number. I'm probably going to fade it myself, to be honest with you, because I don't really love it either way. But I agree with you. I've seen it at 8.5 or 9 in a lot of places. So if you can get it at 10.5, you got to feel good about that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Any final thoughts, brother, before we wrap it up?
No, man, I'm just happy. Happy football's back. The wait is over. 2 more nights. We got the opening game. I think it's going to be great. And I'm just excited for another season. Yeah, I'm excited. I agree 100%. And I'm going to call it right now. Drake May, week 5 in Foxborough against Miami. That's the spot to bring him in. I hope they do it. Otherwise, these first 4 weeks, I don't know what we're looking for. Hopefully good positive signs, building blocks, right? Yeah. I don't know. We're going to try and have to muster up some fandom and be interested in these games. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get a pleasant surprise. But we want to thank everyone that watched or listened to this edition of the Dr. Football Podcast. Have a great, great, great week. Enjoy all the football, and we will catch you next week with a new episode. Take care. Be well.